I used to lift till I separated my shoulder. This is a sort of bullshit that I have heard over the course of my life for decades. And here I am, a guy 43 years old. You guys can watch me do a nice clean 615-pound deadlift. I walk around largely unhurt. Not saying I haven't had some injuries in my life, largely unhurt. Reasonably jacked dude for being in my 40s, who is a strength coach these days by profession. I live and breathe strength. And the amount of bullshit lines I have heard in my life from guys who say they used to lift, and I want to help all of you younger guys out there not become one of these useless pieces of shit. Because that's really what they are. And I hate to say that because I love lifting and I don't like to look down on people that I don't have to. But it's frustrating because you hear it over and over and over as you get older through the years around lifting. And it's always, yeah, I used to lift and I used to be about twice your size and I never took no steroids or protein powder or nothing. And you look at some guy and he's about 280 pounds of blubber with a gut sticking out 12 inches past his titties with little toothpick arms, who expects you to believe this. Now, it's even more frustrating when he's 5 years younger than you. Now, people say, well, maybe he did used to lift. I'm sure he did. And of course, he was twice my size, so he's even bigger than Ronnie Coleman with no steroids or protein powder or nothing. Well, when you start talking to him and he got hurt and injured and quit training, you find some things. First of all, he has no clue about anything about training. When you talk to these people, they never know anything. They're not former power lifters. They're not a guy who benched 475 in comp and then got hurt. They didn't have a 600-pound deadlift and then, damaged their back. Okay? You just chat with them and you find out a little bit of stuff. You can ask them a few questions and you realize they don't know what a meat legal bench is. So they'll talk about how much they used to bench. They don't know that you're supposed to pause on the chest. They don't know that a squat is supposed to be to parallel. They don't know even what that means. Okay. You start asking them about training programming, periodization. They have never heard of any form of training or periodization. They learned how to train looking at the bodybuilding magazine. Okay. They generally have no clue about training at all. And when you start talking to them, it's very apparent they didn't do anything for injury prevention or muscle balance. They were ego lifters. If they didn't get hurt lifting heavy, that's what everyone thinks, that everyone who lifts heavy must get hurt. Well, there's guys out there deadlifting 700 pounds older than me who aren't hurt. Not what it is. Largely unhurt lifting what I lift. You don't get hurt because you lift heavy. You get hurt because of piss poor training, piss poor imbalances, weaknesses. Okay, you get hurt because you are weak, and you're weak because you have weak links that you never correct. One of the things you find, none of these guys ever paid attention to shoulder health. None of these guys even seem to realize that the posterior deltoid even exists. Okay. None of them have any concept of how different grip widths on a bench might affect them. None of them have any clue about basic bar pass on a bench press. See where I'm going here? None of them ever trained their hamstrings. You start asking them if they did lower body exercises, and you listen closely, none of them put any focus on the hamstring. Now they have knee problems. They have knee problems because they did half squats and half reps on a leg press, loaded up as many plates as they can put on it for partials. Didn't train their hamstrings. Okay, if they hurt their back, it's because they had weak hamstrings, didn't train their erectors properly, did goofy cheat exercises, bounced. If they deadlifted, it's because they did bouncing, touching, grips. You chat with them, and these guys who have a back injury, ask them, start talking to them about it. Number one, none of them trained their hamstrings. Number two, they have no idea about resetting on a deadlift when you start talking to them. Okay? I want you to let that sink in. There's a common trend in the I used to lift till I did some stupid shit and hurt myself. Okay, it's number one, they didn't pay attention to muscle balance, injury prevention, no clue about training programming, recovery, nothing. Nothing. They had a chest day, an arm day, all that nonsense. Okay. Number two, they have no idea about proper execution of exercises. Number three, they're quitters. When you start chatting to most of them, they didn't get hurt multiple times and figure out how to fix it. They got hurt one time and they gave up. Got hurt one time and they gave up. I want people to understand how common this is, because look around the gym. How many guys do you guys know? Some of you guys who are 20, 25. How many of your friends work out now? Tons of them. How many of them are idiots? How many of them really don't know anything about training? That's an honest question. At least half of them. You don't think the guys my age and the next generation down train just as much? You don't think they went to the gym? So here's what I'm going to say to a lot of you younger guys out there who are doing this because you're chasing aesthetics or whatever it is you think that you're chasing. Training is a lifelong dedication, or it should be. The benefits go with you through life. And when you get obsessed with stuff like aesthetics instead of actual proper muscle balance and performance, you're going to get hurt easier. I'm just telling you, that's a reality. And your goals are going to change too. And when you guys get hurt, most of you are going to quit. You will, because you're going to be unmotivated. You're going to lose your motivation. You want to know why you're going to lose your motivation? Because you chased something you probably could never have. You didn't train for the purpose of just self-betterment, improving yourself, and you didn't think through the injury end. Okay? This is stuff you have to think about. What are you going to do if you get hurt? You have a plan. Are you going to come back from it? And I'm saying this as someone who has had injuries when younger, hurt myself, had to rehab myself, had to have a bicep reattached. Again, my stupidity in my 20s. I was stupid like you guys, don't worry. It's normal. Also got sick, spent a year in bed, had to learn to walk again, had to lose 100 pounds, that's why I have a loose skin. Gained 100 pounds of fat while sick and depressed. A decade ago, had to rebuild myself to that 615 deadlift. Most guys are going to quit because it's in their nature to quit, and because they don't have well-established habits and goals and flexible goals. They don't have other long-term goals that says, you know what, training is intrinsically valuable simply for the sake of training, not just for this immediate goal. Training is something you can do for life that will continue to make you better for life. And tell you guys right now, what you don't want to have happen is to be so obsessed with training that you're willing to watch YouTube videos on it, and then 15 years from now be just another fat guy who now has a slow metabolism because he can't train or exercise because he's been hurt, and you just quit. You don't want to be that guy. I might suggest to you guys to get a little more mature with your goals. Start thinking in terms of longevity. Okay, this is what I want right now. What am I going to do later? Maybe I need to go ahead and balance everything. Maybe I need to be thinking about the long term in my training. And that doesn't mean you don't lift heavy, guys. It's not what I'm saying, because you guys know I believe in lifting really heavy. You don't get hurt that way by default. It's not inherently dangerous. But you know what? Having weak hamstrings is dangerous. Having weak erectors is dangerous. Having weak posterior deltoids is dangerous. Using shitty form and ego lifting, that's dangerous. Right? Not paying attention to your recovery. Not being willing to periodize training or change training stimulus to avoid overuse injuries. Being stubborn and saying this is going to be my favorite exercise and I'm going to do it all the time no matter what. That's called overuse injuries. You guys have to think these things through, because what you don't want to be is that guy who's, I used to lift. And I only talk to him out of morbid curiosity. I actually talk to those guys these days when I bump into one in the airport or whatever. I talk to them because I want to learn what they did wrong to put them in that situation. And there's definitely common trends. They're basically your idiot bro who you know now who trains just for the girls. That's who they were. And they never bothered to learn anything. And then they have a degree of delusion about how big and jacked they really were. They live in the past, right? With nostalgia. And that's a sad existence because every one of us should still be training when we're 60, 70 years old, right? We should be in the gym killing it. That's my goal, to have all of you do that. Pay attention to these things. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.